So at this point, we're about 25% of the way done our school year. So I figured it would be a really good time to do a quarter 1 update. I did an update last month, kind of just sharing some things that I've noticed the first month of our school. And then, so I kind of wanted to follow up on those things. And then I also did a life update last month as well. And I just shared kind of what's been going on in my life, kind of since starting YouTube, even a little bit before YouTube, and kind of how that's everything that's gone on. It was a pretty personal, in-depth video. So if you want to look at either of those, I'm going to kind of touch on both of those today, just kind of do a follow-up and do a brief overview of what those are. But if you want like a more in-depth idea of what I'm talking about, check out those videos. I'll have them linked below. I also am going to be adding timestamps just because in case you don't really care about like what I'm talking about with my first grader, you'd rather hear about my 5th grader or whatever. I'll have all of that down below so that you can just skip to the part that you want if you don't want to hear the whole thing. I'd love for you to hear the whole thing though. So first things first, we are still adjusting and figuring out a routine for the school year. It is a lot of changes this year, more changes this year than I feel like we've had ever. So first is my middle is going to school. So we have to add a school routine, drop off and pick up, and all that entails. And then I recently quit my job. I've worked for the past 11 years. And so I finally just quit by the time this video airs, it'll be about a month. So being home every day, I'm adjusting to kind of like a new routine. So we're kind of still just fine tuning that and kind of getting into our groove. It's still not quite there, but I think soon it should be. For morning time, morning basket, we call it morning basket. It's just our group subjects. It's Bible, history, science, and then some extras like music and a little bit of geography and art and things like that. So we, last year I had separated them. I had just done like Bible and devotionals at the beginning of the day, and then we did our main independent subjects like math and language arts, and then we finished the day with history and science. That worked really, really, really well last year. I was like, well, let's do it this year. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Well, it broke this year. I found myself like at the end of doing my girls' lessons, their math and language arts, I just felt like, okay, I want to be done with school. Like I had no energy for some reason to do science and history at the end of the day. So we have gone back to what we did originally, and we're doing all of our morning subjects, our group subjects in the morning. And so that has been worked out really well. It's kind of helped us be a little bit more efficient with time, and we're finished actually earlier somehow getting it. We still get the same amount of done, but we're done earlier. And so I like that. I like to be done by lunch. I know that's not realistic for everybody, but it works for us. So that is something that is good. That little adjustment, that little tweak. Sometimes all you need is just a little tweak, a little adjustment, and it's like, okay, that fixes that. I'm not going to review all of our subjects, just kind of hit on some of the highlights. This one is great poems. So there are some really great poems in here, but this is just not cutting it for me. I have to kind of search and search. There's like 300 pages of poems in here, and I have to like read through to find one that is fitting. Some of them are really, really in depth and deep, and that is just not, I don't like that. So if you actually have suggestions of like age appropriate poetry for my kids, because they are just met with blank stares. I know they're not listening and paying attention when I read these. I still do like once a week. It's not a big poetry tea time. I already mentioned that in one of my other videos that we don't do poetry tea time, but I have added poetry once a week. They each pick one poem, so it takes only like 3 or 4 minutes to go through. But what takes longer is me finding a poem that they would actually understand or have even some slight chance of understanding. Lola is doing 2 sciences, and I did a whole review on that. So if you're interested in that, those are going well with us so far. She's doing master books, and she is doing Little Hearts and Hands from the Good and the Beautiful. She does science 3 days per week. And then my other daughter, Larissa, the other 2 days a week does science with the Good and the Beautiful, the older grades. So at the beginning of the year, I had shared that we were going to be doing birds and energy and the marine biology unit from the Good and the Beautiful. So I actually just had these. I didn't want to go fooling around with like hole punching all this. So I just took it to Staples and had it bound. And it has been so great to do that. So we're almost finishing energy. This unit, I don't know. It's not that it's not done well. I have found that all of their units are done well. It's just a matter of personal preference. And personally, my daughter does not love this. I don't love it. I find some of it interesting, but we're just getting through it. So it's okay. It's definitely not our favorite. And then I did add that I didn't get to talk about. I bought these in the summer. I said, since the new marine biology was coming out, I forget how I happened to choose this one. Honestly, I forget. I don't know. So initially I was just going to download the marine biology, but apparently they updated it. So I said, let me just buy the new one. And so I bought this, and it comes with the student journal, and it is glorious. I think they were listening to their people when I don't know. I thought it was just me who like completely hated putting these units together, and that's why I avoided it for so many years. But yeah, I hate putting these units together. I'm just going to be honest. It is not fun. So the fact that they do that, and then they have the student journal, it's amazing. I can't wait to use this. I have looked through these and I can't wait. So we have marine biology, and we have safety. Also, they made it for grades 3 to 8 because that was another thing. I know I mentioned that. I'm sure they were listening to me like, oh, you know that random girl on YouTube? Let's take her suggestions and completely overhaul our science. They did update it for trying to see if that will show. There you go. 3rd to 8th, because before it said kindergarten to 8th, and I just personally think that kindergartners, this is way over their head for most. Some would probably be okay, but I would say the majority is not age appropriate for kindergarten levels. So we will do safety. That's going to be the main update for our morning basket, morning time, group subjects, whatever you want to call it. I did mention that I added on Abeka history, the old world history. So it's covering Africa, Asia, Europe, and Australia. I added that on for my 5th grader. So she's doing that just to kind of get her into that, an introduction of like world history. And that's going well too. So nothing huge in that realm. Now I want to move on to Lola. She's probably the biggest change that I've had so far. I gave a big background to this in my last video, my last update of like, were we going to pause Abeka? At that point, I wasn't sure. And the reason was, it was not that there was anything wrong with Abeka, and there's nothing wrong with her. It's just, she's just not quite ready. She's in 1st grade. She technically should just be in kindergarten, but she's in 1st grade now. If you're interested, like I said, I shared all of that in that other video. I don't want to rehash it, but so she did preschool okay, she did kindergarten okay, but now that she's in 1st grade, it's just going a little bit too fast for her. So I think Abeka is an amazing program. It really is great, but we have decided to pause it, pause the language arts for right now. What that looks like, at the time I made that other video last month, we had already put a hold on her spelling. That was just too much. The day was just so long. The days were lasting so long. And I'm like, she's just in 1st grade. Like, I had no time to read to her. She didn't have time to play. Like, she was doing school. It was too much for her. So I wanted to cut back. I figured she has years to do school for hours. Let me just, like, she's in 1st grade. Let's just dial it back a little bit. So what I have paused is I'm not doing the teacher lessons. We're not going lesson by lesson like we were. I'm not doing the letters and sounds book. I am not doing the language book. And again, we're not doing the spelling. So the only thing we're doing right now for her, for that, is she's doing still her charts, her phonics charts, her special sounds charts, and reviewing that to continue to build on that phonics. I don't want her to forget it. I just want her to continually grow on that. So we're going to still do that. She still is doing the readers. We're taking our time with the readers because she is actually a decent reader. Reading wasn't the problem. I'll get to what was in just a second. So we're doing the readers, and then I have slowly introduced the handbook for reading. She doesn't love that, but it's good, it's effective, and it breaks it up just a little bit. So we're still practicing that hand or that reading skill, and she's not losing it. She's still laying that foundation and continuing it. The reason I know it was too much is because I had just done all of the same exact material and same everything exactly the same way for my other daughter, her older sister, who is 3 years older than her, but only 2 grades ahead of her. So I had just done that. And so I knew Lexi, who did that a few years ago, did really well in 1st grade. She thrived. She became a really fluent reader, a really good speller, just a really strong foundation. And Abeka worked really well for her. She could keep up with pace. And so she did everything. She did the spelling, she did it all. And so that wasn't a problem. If doing it with Lola was my first time, had I not done that with Lexi before, I probably would have thought like, oh my goodness, Abeka's too much. This is too much. Like, what is she doing? This isn't right for her. And I probably would have given up. But I know that it works, and I just know that Lola's not ready right now. And so she will be probably in a few months. She's just not there yet. And so some signs that she wasn't there, it actually manifested a lot in the teacher's lesson. So for example, they would say some dictation. So I would say either a blend or a word, and she would have to write it down. So let's say the word was club. She would write C-U-B. She would forget the L, the CL. She wasn't really like hearing that. So and she would get really discouraged because she wouldn't get any of them right ever. And so that wasn't, it wasn't helping. She just wasn't getting it. If the word was soft, she would write S-O-T. She would forget the F. So little things like that showed me she wasn't grasping, and she couldn't really connect the two, the spelling, from listening to writing it down and translating it. The second thing was she was starting to get overwhelmed with circling the special sounds. She got used to just circling the first 2 letters. So regardless of what the special sound was, she was just circling the first 2 letters. And that was another red flag. Like, she's not visually picking up and discerning and discriminating what the special sound she's looking for. Even if I told her, I had to go retell her. And so it just wasn't working. It just was going over her head. And so those were some signs, and it wasn't just once or twice. It was several weeks of this. So I said, we're done with that, but I didn't want a whole new curriculum. I looked and researched many options out there. You guys all gave me some suggestions. I did look at all of them, but I didn't want to start brand new, A, because I didn't want to spend a lot of money on a whole new curriculum, and B, a lot of them were not close enough. They were teaching phonics not similarly enough, and I didn't want to confuse her because, like I said, I am going back to Abeka. It's just I needed to pause it. I needed something as kind of like a filler for the in-between. And everything kindergarten level was way too easy for her. So I was kind of in a rut of like, what should I do? So I remembered that Explode the Code has a really good phonics-based worksheet style program. And so that has replaced her worksheets. And so she's still getting that practice. And what I like about it is that it is incorporating some of those spelling words. So like slip, she has to see it and then have it written down. And then she sees it written down and then she copies it. So it is really inadvertently, she doesn't realize it, but it is helping her to learn spelling and is teaching her spelling. And so that I think will be really helpful going forward. And it does use a lot of the same special sounds that Abeka does use. The book that we have is about 90 pages. It's only focusing on maybe 10 to 15 of those special sounds, whereas Abeka has, I don't know, like 140. But I'm not so worried about that. I'm more worried about her just slowing down, really, I think, connecting with those phonics principles. I think having that connection, that, seeing it, being able to read it, and then being able to translate that into spelling. I'm not worried if she's like this amazing speller right now at 1st grade, but I just want her to get that concept of having that kind of milestone of being able to connect the dots, so to speak. So she's liking it so far. Again, we're going to do it for the next few months. We'll see what happens. I'll maybe try to pick it up in January. We'll see. I'll let you know kind of where it's going to be at, but we'll probably take the second half of the year and then maybe come back to Abeka. We will eventually, but just not right now. As far as math goes with the good and the beautiful, she really loves it. She's like, that's my favorite math. I know I mentioned that there was some lessons that were a little bit like where is this coming from? And this is a little out of, like, doesn't make total sense. I haven't come across that completely. There's one or two things that I don't love. I am going to do a comparison between the Good and the Beautiful Math 1 and Abeka Math 1. I haven't done that yet, so I will have that out at some point. So what I used to do for Lexi, when my middle one, when she was in first grade, she did the old Good and the Beautiful, and then she would do a lesson a day, and then she would do a page of Abeka Math, and she did the Abeka Math independently, and that worked great for her. There was no problems, no issues. It was fine. Again, we're coming into some issues of Lola. First of all, I think the new Good and Beautiful Math, there's more practice problems, so there is more work for her to do. So it's taking longer just by nature of it. And so adding that extra sheet of math pages for her was just too much. So in the past, adding a supplemental worksheet has never been an issue, and that's why we've always done it. Had it been an issue, I would have scaled back. And now that it is an issue with my youngest, that's what I'm doing. So what I'm doing is 3 lessons a week of the Good and the Beautiful Math. It's supposed to be done 4 lessons per week, but we're scaling it back to 3. And then the other 2 days a week, I am doing Abeka Math sheets with her. I don't have the lesson plans. I don't do the teacher guide. I'm not doing 2 full different maths. I'm not a crazy person. I am just doing the Good and the Beautiful for her main math, and then we're doing the Abeka worksheets just because I like to have that kind of filling in those gaps, so to speak, and kind of supplementing and just kind of diversifying, you know. I don't know. I just feel like different subject or different curriculum teach different things and cover different things. So we are doing that. She'll do 2 pages twice a week. So total, she'll do 4 pages of Abeka a week and 3 lessons of the Good and the Beautiful. And when where we end up, we will not finish it all by the end of the school year. But I'm not worried about that. I am more focused on going at her pace and not overwhelming her and not having her get discouraged and feel burdened and bogged down with work. I want to go at her level. And so I'm just kind of following her lead. And so far, it seems to be working well. We're having more time to, you know, just, she can play more. I'm reading to her more. I love reading to her throughout the day and just really trying to slow down and focus and not have her little first grade little mind be just bombarded with school all day. Like, I don't know, bless her little heart. So we have cut down a lot. And it just goes to show you that, you know, what works. You know, I always say, this is just what works for us. It's going to look different for you and your children. And even in our homeschool, within my same, you know, my kids, it looks different. So keep that in mind. It doesn't have to be, okay, this is what we choose and this is what it's going to be forever. It can change, and it should, as needed for each kid. Okay, and then finally, Larissa in 5th grade, I shared how the Good and the Beautiful Math is like taking forever. It still is taking forever. That has not decreased at all. This time is it's still a huge time, but she likes it. She says she still likes to do it. She doesn't want, not that we were going to switch, but I said, like, if you could switch, would you? And she was like, no, I don't want to. I asked what's your favorite subject? She still said math is. So it hasn't deterred her enough that she doesn't like it anymore, but it is taking a while. And we have incorporated that she just does her main lesson, and then any review problems she will do for her homework. She assigns herself homework. So she does that, and that seems to be working out. And so it breaks up the lesson a little bit, but it still does. They still take quite a bit of time. Overall, everything else is pretty good, pretty fluid. No big deal, no major changes. I will say that I have seen that something seems a little off, and I was like, well, what's up? And basically, after multiple conversations, she's a little bit jealous that her sister gets to go to school and that she doesn't. And I think even more so because she knows all the kids. She goes to like Bible study with them, and she goes to church with them, and so she sees all the same kids all the time, so she knows them. So I think she feels like she's being left out of school. She said she still likes to homeschool. It's nothing wrong with homeschooling. I think she just feels a little bit like, my sister gets to go and I don't. So we have been talking, and I've tried to like discuss like, well, what is something that we could do here that would make you a little bit happier or more content or whatever. And for her, she really is a scheduled person. She's like, so I said, what about school do you like? I like that school starts at a certain time and it ends at a certain time. So I said, okay, we can try to do that. So even though most homeschoolers will preach, you don't have to be on a schedule and you don't have to be at this time and this time. And, I get that if you don't want to do that for certain reasons, totally understandable. You have the freedom to do that. And we still, don't follow schedule to a T. But for her, that's really important. So we have been starting at a certain time at 8:35. We set an alarm for this time, set an alarm for this time, set an alarm for recess, set an alarm for at the end of the day. And when the alarm goes off, we move on to the next thing. She does like to sometimes finish up what she's doing real quick. But she enjoys that and it's helpful. She likes it. So I'm like, okay, that's really not a big deal to me to do that if it's something that you prefer. And then some other things, I think she wants a little bit more. She really likes traditional style stuff. Like she wants tests to study for, and she likes that. I honestly, personally think she would actually do really, really, really well if she went to school. She would be the type that would just excel. I think she would do great. But that's not an option right now. And so I'm trying to work with what we can. I'm like, well, what about a co-op if we just did 1 day a week? So she said maybe, so we're kind of looking into that right now. Like I said, I was never able to do that before, just because of my work schedule. But now that I'm home, I have more free time to do that. So that is something that we might look into. I don't know, for maybe, this year, next year, I'm not sure. It's just something that we're still kind of lightly touching the waters. I don't want to make any promises. I probably shouldn't even talk about it right now, just because in case that doesn't happen, I don't want you, what did you do? What happened with that? I don't know. It's just things that we're discussing. I just want her to be, this isn't me. This isn't the Lauren show over here. This isn't all about what I want. It is their education and they have a voice and they have a say-so. And I want to respect that to the best of my abilities. And then lastly, on a personal note, I just want to thank you all so much for the outpour of love and support and kind words and encouragement and just such touching stories. And I'm going to cry just talking about it and thinking about it from my video that I shared about how life has been and the struggles it's been going through and quitting my job and just wrestling with that and, struggling to have another baby. And your stories have just been really incredible. And it's just been such a blessing to me just reading them. Like truly no comment has gone unread. I've read them all. They meant so much to me. I was like overwhelmed by all the comments, trying to keep up with everyone. It's just been incredible. So thank you so much. As far as staying home, it's been almost a month now and it is incredible. I love it. I feel so lucky. I'm like, this can't be it. I'm just like, I just feel so lucky and so blessed and just like thankful all the time that it's like finally getting to live a dream that I've had for years and that it's real. I found myself like the first few weeks thinking, okay, tonight is Sunday, I have to go into work tomorrow, and then catch myself like, oh no, I don't have to. Or the first few weeks, like any downtime I had in the afternoon, okay, I need to catch up on my hours. And it's like, no, I don't have to. And so that has just been so freeing. I just feel like I can breathe again, even though I did love where I worked and I love the people there, just not having that huge burden and responsibility on me. Sorry, someone came out and was like talking. My husband and daughter were talking and I lost my train of thought, but I think I was saying it's just like a burden lifted and just I just feel so like just so much better. And it's just been so helpful to have that one thing, huge thing taken off my plate. And it just feels like I can finally just be focused on my kids, my house, my husband, YouTube again. And just that is where my heart is with all of those things. And so it's just been incredible. Thank you again a million times. And like I said, I think that you were more of a blessing to me and all the encouragement that you gave to me. And it was just so sweet and so touching. And I truly appreciate it. So thank you so much for watching. If you have not subscribed but want to stick around and subscribe for more homeschool, mom, motherhood, lifestyle type videos, I would love to have you here. If you did like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Until then, I will see you in my next video. Bye guys.